As far as overreactions go, I think we're not going to do any overreactions this week. Obviously the internet. Actually, you know what? Fuck it. Overreaction. Um, I get it, man. I get people don't like the international break, especially when we just started the season here in Europe. But I mean, I think this is kind of um, why we have the Nations League, right? I know some people don't care too much about the Nations League, and I'm also one of those people. Unless my team's in the final, then I'm gonna rub it in on Mexico's face. But I think that was kind of the reason why the international break has become this. I think it has its perks, right? And I know right now as a U.S. men's national team fan, kind of hard to like it, right? Because of how things turned out in the Canada USA game, where Canada got their first win in the U.S. in since last time they won was like 1957 or something like that. Don't quote me, but to me, still though, I like uh it to me it still has its purpose. It's still the international break still serves what it's supposed to serve, and I think um obviously if these national teams were to uh use it in the way I think it is, I mean obviously now we have Nations League, so there's like some sort of trophy at stake for some of these countries. Obviously, specifically Europe and CONCACAF. I can't say the same for Africa, but I believe Africa is doing qualifiers for AFCON already, or World Cup qualifiers. One of those. It might be World Cup qualifiers actually, to be honest. But I think it's a good thing to continue having. It's something that we know that's routine, and I think that that's a good thing. I know it takes a break, takes a pause from the season play, and obviously the season has been pretty fun so far. There's lots of things that are being talked about, but I think that still at the end of the day, we still need to have some sort of structure, and I think the international break still does it. Now, the purpose that I think needs to be utilized for is to test out the players those players that are not necessarily like solid guaranteed guys that are going to be playing. That's where my thought process comes from. I think that is it's a prime opportunity to test those guys out. I think for the U.S. we got to see Schulte be the starting goalkeeper, right? I think that was an interesting thing to test out for the U.S. I think you know those are where I think it's the purpose for is to test out those fringe players, those guys that don't necessarily are you're not certain that those guys are going to be guys to fit, but I think the guys that you're 100% set that those guys are going to be on the squad, I think you can afford to rest them. I mean, still have some sort of continuity and have feature some of the guys from the regular roster um in these nations, but at the same time you can probably, hey, Jude Bellingham, take a weekend off. This is the weekend. This is the month that we're not going to call you up. Rest up. Things like that, right? But I still think international break still serves a purpose. I still love watching international football, and I'm not going to change my stance on liking international football. I think that it's it is the way that I started liking this game. As a kid, I didn't necessarily know too much about club football. I knew more about the World Cup and international stuff. And that was just me being a kid. So my whole time, I just thought you played for your country. I didn't know about clubs. It wasn't until the 2002 World Cup where I started learning about players and I started learning the leagues that they play in. And that's how I ended up. And then at that time, that's when I discovered that El Fenomeno Ronaldo played for Real Madrid, and that's how I became a Real Madrid fan. So I think internationally, it still has its importance, right? And I know the tournaments are what matters more, but I still think in getting your roster correct, especially when aiming for the goal is to get ready for the summer, for any tournament that's happening. Obviously, big focus right now is still the World Cup. But obviously, where UEFA and both CONCACAF have the Nations League to prepare for, and like I said, I think Africa either is doing AFCON qualifiers or they're doing World Cup qualifiers. But also, World Cup qualifiers is a thing. As a matter of fact, that's what Golden Bowl is doing. So I think that it's not necessarily a pointless international break. Now, if it was friendlies, definitely test out the field, test out those guys that you're not totally sure yet if they should be on your regular lineup for a friendly. But if we're talking about Nations League, we're talking about World Cup qualifiers, we're talking about AFCON qualifiers, those kind of things, I think those matches matter. So you want to put your best 11 out there on the field. But when it comes to a friendly, I would argue that yes, that's where you don't necessarily have to bring out your star players because you know what your star players can do. Um, and so I'm fine with that. And but that's my stance right now on the whole matter of where international break. I like the international break, and I maybe a hot take, maybe it's an unpopular opinion, but I actually like the international break, and I feel like it's something that's needed. You know, it's fine to have the international break. There's nothing, it doesn't ruin anything. It doesn't ruin the momentum. I get that we just came off of a summer of international tournaments, but for me, it's still fine. So that's where I stand at.